Hi guys, this is our second video, our second screencastify I've done for you, so hopefully this will be better than the last one. I don't know, maybe I'll get better, maybe I won't. But we're going to be talking about the poem There Will Come Soft Rains by Sarah Teasdale. I know you've already watched one video on it of someone else's analysis, but there are just a few literary terms and things that I want to point out to you. Hopefully this won't be as long as the last one I put up for you. Now, again, what you want to do, if it's possible for you, is you want to download the notes and either fill those in as a Google document, or possibly if you can print it, write things down. It always helps because these things that I go over on the screencastifies are usually things that I want you to know for later writings or even the Socrative quizzes that you're going to take. All right, first of all, how does this poem fit into our mini unit, our second mini unit? This mini unit is called Coexisting. And how this fits in is this poem deals with kind of two different kinds of coexistence. The first kind is humankind or people's existence with each other. How do they get along with each other? How do they tolerate each other? And it goes along with the last thing that we read, which was called tolerance, and how people really need to learn to get along with each other. The second thing that this does, the second way that this fits into our unit, is how nature and humankind coexist. And that's something we don't think about a whole lot because nature is kind of a backdrop to our lives, but this poem really points out kind of something different. I want you to know that it's a 12-line poem itself, and it was originally published in July of 1918, and it came out originally in an issue of Harper's Bazaar, which was a pretty popular magazine at that time. This poem deals with the idea of nature's reaction to a war that is going on. This war eradicates, wipes out all people, all of humankind. And this is a pretty futuristic concept for 1918 because nuclear weaponry, the idea of it, was not even developed or present until 25 years after the poem was written. Now, this is the whole poem in its entirety. I know you've read it before, but I want to point a few things out to you. First of all, of course, we've got the 12 lines, and those are divided into 6 stanzas. And the stanzas, if you look there, you see 2 lines and a space, and 2 lines and a space, and 2 lines. Basically, what those are in any poem, those separation of those lines from each other, that's called a stanza. And I kind of call a stanza, it's not an official definition by any means, but I kind of think of it as a poem paragraph. You know how paragraphs kind of like have their own idea and their own thought? Well, it's kind of the same thing with poetry. You have these kind of 2 thoughts, and then it goes on to another kind of thought, and it's divided out into these stanzas. And a poem that has 6 stanzas is called a sestet. So that's what we have here. Okay, now I also want to point out to you, this poem is written in what we call rhyming couplets. If you look there where I have the little star up at the top, you see at the end of each one of these stanzas, you've got 2 rhyming words. So when we have those 2 line stanzas, and we have them rhyming with each other, those are called rhyming couplets because it's 2, so a couple. Now, some terms I want you to know, and you've probably learned these before in other English classes, so we'll just kind of review. But one term that I want you to know for this poem is called personification. Personification is when you attribute a personal nature or something that's human, like a human characteristic, to something that's not actually a person, not human. Or it can be the representation of something abstract, kind of an idea in human form. So what we have in this poem was we have this concept of spring, this abstract concept of spring, which is not one particular thing, but the poem makes it seem like spring is a person, a goddess who is like kind of getting up and looking out over nature on this spring morning. The next term I want you to understand in terms of poetry is imagery. And imagery is something that an author uses. It's very descriptive language, it's very vivid, and they use it to add depth to what they're writing about. It would be phrases and words that kind of appeal to the human senses, to kind of give the reader or the listener even of the poem an idea of what something feels like, what something looks like, what something smells like, what something tastes like. So it's supposed to enhance your understanding of what that would be like in reality. Powerful imagery is going to engage all of the senses. You're going to be almost able to feel it or be there or see it, or it's going to kind of create a picture in your mind. And a lot of times these are going to use metaphors to express those ideas and concepts. Our next term that applies to this poem is called alliteration. An alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of words, and those words are going to be kind of close to each other. Alliteration helps a poem sound very musical and adds lines, and it makes these lines more memorable. And alliteration is something like we hear it a lot in like tongue twisters, like she sells seashells. That's alliteration, that S sound repeating, and it makes it sound more poetic. It makes it sound more memorable, more rhythmic, more musical, even. And poetry uses that a lot because poetry is kind of musical. Our next term is theme. And again, this is a review. We talked about theme last time with Harrison Bergeron. Theme is the overall message that the author wants the reader to understand. In this poem, we see a couple different things that the poet wants us to see. The poet wants us to understand in the big, huge picture of life, in the grand scheme of things, that humans, we tend to think of ourselves as the most important thing. Like we're so important, we're walking around, and the rest of the world is like our backdrop. It's just, there to serve us. But we see that this, in the poet's eyes, is a really foolish idea because we see these humans going to war with each other and completely destroying ourselves and completely eradicating all of humankind. And when that happens, humankind isn't missed at all by the rest of the world. So we see what a foolish idea this is, that we are so important that we're walking around thinking that everything is about us, because nature in this poem doesn't even notice, doesn't even know we're gone. Everything continues and nothing changes. It just goes on as before. It's just like we never existed at all. Okay, so let's look at the poem in the couplets themselves, in the stanzas, and I'm going to point a few things out to you. First of all, we have these first two lines, and these 6 lines at the beginning of the poem kind of set us up for a particular idea. So these first 2 lines, there will come soft rains and the smell of the ground, and swallows circling with their shimmering sound. We hear that S sound a lot. We see it in the soft and the smell and the swallows and the circling and the shimmering and the sound. And I know circling's a C, but it's the same sound. What we have there, we have these examples of alliteration. It makes it sound so very rhythmic, and it makes it sound easy and soft to us. And the words themselves give us this idea of this peaceful spring country nature idea. We see the soft rains. It's not hard rain, so it's nice and gentle, and the smell of nature all around, and the birds overhead and making this sweet noise, this shimmering sound. So it's a very pretty, peaceful image. Our next 2 lines, and frogs in the pools singing at night, and wild plum trees in tremulous white. Again, we have that imagery, and we have that setup of how things are peaceful, and it's very much natural and in the country, and where we can imagine a tranquil setting with the frogs making their sound at night, which I personally love that sound. And then we see these trees that are blooming and so pretty, tremulous, meaning they're kind of like quivering or shaking in the wind, in the breeze. Robins will wear their feathery fire, whistling their whims on a low fence wire. Again, a really pretty, peaceful, nice image. We have these birds again, these robins down there that I have these pictures of, and they're sitting around on these fence wires and singing their songs, they're whistling their whims, and just a really beautiful, peaceful image. And we see the feathery fire, that kind of thing, so we can almost like imagine what the robins look like, and we hear the sound of their whistling or their singing. And not one will of the war, not one will care at last when it is done. Okay, so here we're seeing basically the idea of, the birds, the swallows, the trees, the nature itself, that when the war is over, and this poem is written at wartime, when the war is over, none of those things even care or notice that people are gone now. Not one would mind, neither bird nor tree, if mankind perished utterly. So again, we're emphasizing that theme that nature, birds, trees, nature itself, it doesn't care that we've gone to war with ourselves and completely eradicated ourselves. It just keeps moving on, and everything is just as peaceful and tranquil and beautiful as before, if not even more so, because we've gotten rid of this idea of people and their wars. And spring herself, when she woke at dawn, would scarcely know that we were gone. We see personification in this line. We see spring, who's personified as a person waking up on this pretty natural morning in the springtime and getting up and going about their business with the flowers and the trees and the birds and the animals, and really doesn't even notice that we are gone. Now, a little bit of trivia, not that it really matters too much, but just some trivia. If anyone's ever played the video game Fallout 3, which is pretty old, I think it was 2003 or 2008. I've got here 8, but now I'm thinking I might be wrong. But anyway, the video game came out, and it references in it. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic world kind of thing in the video, and it references this poem several times within the video game. Haven't played it, but that's what I hear. Okay, so that's it for today's lesson. I'm going to be putting on another video with some of the vocabulary words that we need to learn about. There's going to be some vocabulary words from this particular poem. So I'm going to close out for now and stay tuned for your next vocabulary video. Thanks, guys, for listening. Again, if you have any problems, you have any questions, if I'm not making sense, or if something's confusing and I need to clarify or slow down or whatever it is, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email and I'll be happy to address it. And don't forget, you can always come on to my Google Meets. Those are on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I think I'm on Fridays also. I haven't posted that time yet. And you can come on and ask me any question or just touch base, see how things are going in the class, tell me what you're getting accomplished, that sort of thing. And we'll just continue to do it this way until this whole thing is over. So I'll talk to you later.